So, Maestro, I thought we would start with the typical questions about how you began, because, of course, a conductor always does not begin as a conductor. Begins by training as a musician and then becomes a conductor. So how did it start? What instruments did you play, and so on?
Good evening. Very well, Sophie, but very good. Yeah. Interest. Well, I started playing piano age of 5, 6, because in my house I remember to have this little piano like a toy, but was playing, you know. So after every Sunday after the church, when going home, you know, and playing the songs that I used to listen in the church, I was able to repeat it very easily. It was 5, 6, so my parents thought that it was a good idea. So I mean, to learn how to play piano, and fortunately in my village, because I come from not from Brescia city but south of Brescia, between Brescia and Cremona, it's a village. It's a small city actually, 12,000 people. We got a very old teacher, a lady that you know, this very I would say very elegant lady, very rich family. So she never worked in her life because she was Mrs. So and she taught me to play piano. I went to the Brescia Conservatory, but during my study in Brescia Conservatory, I discovered the orchestra as an instrument, because on a trip to Vienna with my parents in 1985, in Easter, the Sunday of Easter, I saw the Wiener Philharmonic played in the Stefan Dome in Vienna. It wasn't the first show, so I said, oh, this is the instrument I want to play. It was the orchestra. So from that moment, I was a good pianist at the time, but I said I want to do something different. I discovered the orchestra. But the orchestra has been scores. So I started buying my first scores, and I discovered the scores. So I to understand the scores. I tried to learn how to compose. So I moved to Milan to study composition, and that's all. That's my training as a student. And after, of course, I did some master classes with some teachers. Jorma Panula is a good teacher from Finlandia. Actually, he's the former teacher of Pekka Salonen and Nico Frank. I studied with Johnny Gigelmetti, who at that time was a teacher in Accademia Chigiana in Siena. And this is my training.
Mm-hmm. And what was your first experience of conducting? Because, you know, as you know, when you first stand before an orchestra as a young person, before a group of professional musicians as opposed to student musicians, it can be a frightening experience, no?
Yes, I have to tell, when I was 17, I was playing the organ in the church of my village, and there was very old book about music of the 20s or the 30s, so, organ music. So I took one of these books and I started to orchestrate for orchestra. So I remember that Christmas I went to the priest and said, look, I would like to play these pieces I orchestrated in next Christmas. Well, why not? Let's do it. So I hired all my friends from the conservatory. I was already graduated, but also a good student. And I conducted for the first time. And one of them said, you're good, you're very good. So I said, why not? So I said, I also take lessons to conducting lessons. So I went to one of the teachers in Brescia Conservatory that is Umberto Benedetto Michelangelo. He's a good conductor. He told me, I don't teach anybody, I'm not a teacher, conducting teacher, so I give you a number of a friend of mine. He's a very good teacher, he's experienced with talented guys. So I called him and said, I have an orchestra, but I have to know how to conduct it, so please teach me. So I went to Milan for my first time. I was 17, took my first train to Milan. And yeah, we are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what was the first professional experience of conducting that you had?
Yeah, the first real, what I consider my first real experience was in Prague in 1992. I've been invited by the Solisty Praga Chamber Orchestra there for a series of concerts, and they were really, really good orchestra. It was the first time have a confrontation with this kind of extremely talented musician experience. I was like, I was 22, 23, they were already over 60, so these people that play the violin their whole life, and would have to say to them, I have nothing to say. So they really understood what it means to be prepared and to know really the score. Even you have people that played Tchaikovsky's Serenade in the last 40 years or 30 times per season, that you have also to say something.
Yeah, I just saw yesterday a class I was teaching in Philadelphia about historic conductors, and we were watching an interview with Bruno Walter from 1958 or so, and he talked about when he first started conducting when he was in his teens, 18 or something like that, and he said, I knew exactly what I wanted, and I got in front of the orchestra, and it didn't sound anything like what I expected it to sound like.
Yeah,
and I didn't know what to do.
Yeah, I remember at the beginning I was studying the scores and writing notes. I want this, I want that, But I realized that going in front of the orchestra and read the note was not convincing. Because you read a note, maybe you listen from somebody else, this is not yours. So the musician does not really get it because, it's not convincing. If you're not convinced, you cannot convince them. So this is a very interesting relation, but psychology in conducting is very important.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, there is the give and take.
Exactly.
I mean, because the conductor doesn't make the sound, except some conductors go, when they're conducting.
No.
But the conductor
that
shouldn't make the
yeah,
sound.
yeah. If you go, even if you are a lot of experience, I see it now. Okay, I'm 44. I'm doing this job for 15 years. I'm glad to conduct in the best orchestra in the world, but even if you have experience, sometimes it's difficult to move the orchestra. They're really used to have a kind of sound that you were used to play with an attitude. You cannot change it. You need a lot of rehearsal, and nowadays we don't have rehearsal. Rehearsal that means money. So going on with always less rehearsal. That's real difficult.
When you're working with an orchestra or an opera orchestra that you haven't worked with before, do you start your first rehearsal by letting them read a little bit so that you get familiar with them and they get familiar with you?
I can tell you an experience. When I did my Metropolitan Opera debut, so the first day with the orchestra, I was thinking the previous day what they have to say at the beginning. You go to the great orchestra that we play Rigoletto, they play Rigoletto every season, so they can. They don't even the music. They don't need it. They can play by memory. So I decided to do what was natural for me, to do what to say at the beginning. I went there and said, "Good morning, Papa." No, it's not necessary to tell any stories. They want to understand you as a musician, of course as a conductor, if you have technique, to be able to explain what you want. But they need someone that gives them something, some ideas, some new ideas, a reason to play. They don't need to rehearse, they know the piece. So if you have to read it, you have to give them a reason to do it. And for me that was really important because I understood, it was a moment of maturity for me. My first orchestra reading with the Met Orchestra. More than, for example, I remember 2001, I did my debut in London with the Philharmonic Orchestra, which for me was one of the best orchestra in the world. But I was so young, so when you're young, you want just to show everybody that you are someone. But it was not that very good experience. I don't have any positive feedback about that experience. But and after I did this this technique with the match, just say good morning and start to play. I usually do that because I want the orchestra knows me as a conductor before than a person. A lot of people talk a lot,
Yeah.
but they don't conduct so much.
Yeah.
So I would like that I offer some my idea as a musician, and maybe after we can talk if you want to know something.
Yes. Yeah, I know. We were listening before to some conversations recorded of Toscanini, and he, in one of the conversations that were recorded when he was very old, he said, you know, when I started to conduct when I was 19, you know, he had conducted 12 operas by heart when he was 19, and all of a sudden in Brazil, he came back to Italy and he said, you know, I started to conduct, and when I would come into the room, I would sit down to rehearse the singers, I would sit down by the piano so that they would know that I was the conductor, because I was younger than anybody else in the room. And you know, this feeling that you know what you want to do musically, but you have to persuade all these other people that what you know and what you want to communicate is worthwhile for them. Also, I had the experience once listening to Carlos Kleiber's first rehearsal of Tristan at La Scala in 1978, something like that. And he said to them at the beginning, I want to read through the prelude. So they read through about 3 notes, and he stopped them. And then 2 more notes, and he stopped them. And 2 more notes, and he stopped them. And they were completely lost because they hadn't played Tristan in, I think, 10 or 11 years, and there were players in the orchestra who had never played it before. So they had this feeling that they were lost. And during the first intermission, I saw Kleiber, and he said to me, I shouldn't be conducting. I'm a terrible conductor. And I said, just let them play at the beginning and then correct them. And he said, it's bigger than I am. I can't.
Of course, I don't want to even discuss on what Kleiber was doing in his career. But I usually do read the piece, and I do read the opera, and after I start from the top, because when you do opera, sometimes it's not in the repertoire of the orchestra, or playing and just playing after half an hour, 45 minutes, alone you understand the style. Yeah, you know, you understand the structure, you understand the feeling around this music. So when the note has to be short, not to say this is not short, no, because afterwards it's coming alone. And the staccato, the quality of the staccato, the legato, how much the fortepiano, how much the accent is coming alone if you let them play. Of course, there are the tests that you have to pay attention for, but I use them that play before say something.
Mm-hmm. Now I'd like to show, to start, want to show a very short video clip of Maestro Frizza early in his career. And this is from a performance of the Beethoven Ninth Symphony, from the finale of the Ninth Symphony in Brescia in 1997.
Well, at the time was the first time working with voices, so sorry about the cast. The cast was not at that time. Today they should never work with me anymore. I'm sorry about that. But you know, this was my beginning. You have to consider that in my city, in Brescia, wasn't. This is the orchestra I founded. So the Brescia Symphony Orchestra is an orchestra that wasn't existing before. We did it. So not in this video, of course, but the quality of orchestra is very good. All these people playing here now, at the time, now they are playing in every orchestra in the world. So because we got always a very good, you know, basin of musicians, but there was an orchestra. So I put together this orchestra and was a good activity until 1998, 99. This concert be done because Alceo Galliera was a great conductor, Italian conductor that worked in the 40s, the 50s, was really good musician. Died in Brescia. He was living there with a wife. That's
Sorry, who was it?
Alceo Galliera.
Ah, Galliera.
And when he passed away, nobody did anything for him to remember him. So we decided to do this concert to his memory in this church, because it's called Chiesa del Carmine. It's one of the most beautiful churches in town. And you don't see, but in the right side of the church is an Antegnati organ from the 16th century that is Mesotonic organ. So one of the most important church in town. We decided to do there because the family was really close to this church, and this is the event we did. But it was an opportunity to conduct, because we did the whole cycle of Beethoven symphonies and concerts. So it was a project, a big project. We took 2 years to play the whole symphonies and concert by Beethoven.
The vocal parts are so difficult in that movement. You know, I remember Placido Domingo said there are parts where if you can hear the mezzo-soprano, it means she's making a mistake.
Yeah, you know that these 4 singers, they were singers in a German theater, and we hired this from a theater, all 4. So they sent it to us like, you know, good singers. When they arrived in town, we discovered it was the soprano and the mezzo was very good. Tenor and bass, yes, no comment about it.
So, okay, so let's proceed a little with the story of your career. When did you first come to the United States?
First time was at the Washington National Opera. Being invited by Domingo to do Cenerentola. That was 2003, no wrong, 2003, yes. Production of, coming from the Royal Opera House, Covent Garden, Cenerentola production, beautiful production with a great cast of Italian singers. Was at the time was Sonia Ganassi, was Antoniozzi, Simone Alberghini, was an American tenor that I really don't remember the name. But that was my real first time in the United States. For me, it was really, you know, a day to remember. Because I work a lot here in the United States. Because I went back in Washington every season until Domingo was there. Because I did Italiana, Cenerentola, Figaro Gimon, I did Cavalleria Rusticana, and we did more. We did many operas. Yeah.
And the Met, when was your first?
My main debut was 2009 with Rigoletto. Same season, I did also Trovatore. 2010, I came back with the introduction of Armida with René Klein. We took it over also the 2011, 5 or 6 performances. 2012, I was in here. 2013, I did Tosca, Norma and Tosca. Last season, I did Bohème. 14-15 Bohème, and now Maria Stuardo.
And next year?
We don't know yet.
You don't know?
No, I'm not here next season. I wasn't available, so they invite me.
Would you like to talk a little bit, make a comparison between working in different countries, in opera houses specifically, how they function or don't function from one country to another, because there are some distinctions.
Do you want that I start telling how you dancing or the operas in Italy, for example? Or you want to know how good are in the United States? Tell me.
No, whatever.
No, I'm kidding.
Just, you know.
I can tell you it's not true that in Italy the theater doesn't work. That's really not true. And I hope that we can see the clip from Teatro Carlo Felice di Genoa. This, is considered one of the most problematic theater in Italy, but you can listen the quality of the orchestra is spectacular. One of the, not talking about Maggio Musicale, La Scala, of course. And I also got good experiences in Italy. And for example, I remember when I did my Opera di Roma debut in 2005, 2004, I don't remember. It was Italiani Algeri. A friend of mine that conducted before me said, oh, be careful because the orchestras, they are so terrible, they are so, they don't quite, they chatting everybody. So I was really scared to do my first reading of the orchestra. I went there, nobody talking, so silent. So I started to speak slow, very, very quiet. So it was a magic. So it depends. I think I have always got good experiences.
Yeah.
Even when I did my debut at the Maggio, when Mr. Lastrate this year left you said in June, right? I went in October. There was nobody there, so it was difficult to work. But at the end, we did a recording. Unfortunately, there is not the older tour here in YouTube. You cannot find it anymore. But we did Tancredi with the direction of Pierluigi Pizzi, one of the most beautiful shows they ever done. It's been recorded by Trade, and they sell a lot of copies. It was really, really good production. And in Italy, we have the opportunity to work a little bit more with the orchestra and with the chorus because we have a little bit more rehearsals. When, of course, you're working in Germany or some North European countries, a bit less. I like also working in France because there you have many hours with the orchestra, with the chorus, stage orchestra rehearsal. I think there's not, my way to work is always the same. I use the hours they give me. When there are not enough, I say no thanks, I don't come. When I think that the amount of hours is enough to do a good job, I try to be consistent in the time I am. But I don't change my way to work depending where I am.
Yeah. I was just thinking when you mentioned Rome opera, I was thinking of a funny story that Maestro Muti told me. He said when he went to conduct them the first time, he went to a rehearsal of the chorus, and he said to them, I imagine that you've heard terrible things about me, and I have heard terrible things about you. And that broke the ice, and everything went very well after that. So yes, you mentioned the Figlia del Reggimento of Donizetti at the Carlo Felice. We have the video of the overture of the Figlia del Reggimento. This was what year?
It was 2005. You will see the principal flute playing in this orchestra. The same principal flute was playing in my orchestra in 1997, and when we played Beethoven. And now he's playing La Scala principal flute. Yeah, so.
I wanted to also ask, this is the standard, one of the standard questions. I think many people, members of the audience, don't understand always that at least 80% of what the conductor has to do is done at rehearsals. What you see at the performance, unless it's somebody who's just stepped in at the last minute, is the result of all these hours of preparation. Could you talk a little bit about that, about the difference between, the finished product and what goes before it?
Well, it's a long story because it's a long story because sometimes you have to do, if you go to the Traviata in Venice, it's very easy because they Traviata from the day they be voted by Verdi. But we have to, for example, Martino Mirandolina, as I did in Wexford 2002. This took a lot of work because the orchestra started playing this Martino opera, but the orchestration was like a symphony, like a third symphony. So the voices wasn't able to go through the orchestra. The Italians was Martino wrote the libretto from Goldoni, of course, and all the accents of the words was in the
wrong
It
places.
was the wrong place. So we took a real job to do because we had to fix it all. I also read from some bars where it was impossible to listen for Bambini, for example, Bambini or the Bambini or you know some accent weird. But of course, when you do the rehearsal, you have to you build. You know, you're building. You have to do your building. You start from the beginning, so you do the preparation with the singers and listen. Usually, I start listen what they have to offer because I'm not the kind of conductor that have an idea. So I open the score and say it has to be like that. No, because even the same score. Same partitura change depends who's going to sing it because any singer are different. So these has some skill, the other has some other skills. So you have to take out from that the best they can offer to you. So maybe it's a singer that cannot move more than a tempo. So and after the reviews, oh, it was too slow. Yeah, that is the tempo that she is able to sing. You know, sometimes it's not in your hands, it's not in your power. So you build all this around the singers, and after you prepare according to the job you did in your vision, the orchestra over there. And when you're supposed to do the performance, everybody has to step up because there is the adrenaline, there is the concentration, there is the audience. So you want to do the best what you prepare. But if you have not the basis before, you cannot really do anything. And usually the performances they are always very different between them, and when you have a great performance, because the splendid night is coming, but it's an event. For me, for example, Maria Stuart, the last performance we did Thursday night, for me was the best of the run. But you know, because finally Jodorowsky recovered, finally the Elisabetta recovered, finally the tenor has the voice. You know, it depends. We got from virus to flu. Jodorowsky cancelled the rehearsal, so she did the debut Maria Stuart in the rehearsal. So it wasn't easy, you know, and you are there, but you have to appear everything ready and prepared. Sometimes not. It's difficult.
Ideally, how long would you like to work with the singers before you start putting together the ensemble rehearsal and so on?
I tell you, usually I don't start. For example, many of my colleagues want to do the first day of music rehearsal, and after have the singers for the sits prova italiana, as you call it. So the first orchestra with singers, but no staging. Okay. I don't do that. I usually want to see before the first week they show our moves, because I think that we are serving the composer, of course, but also the story. So the story, the music is to be, to be in accord with those what happens on the stage. And sometimes you see show that the music is going one way and what you see is going another way. And for me, that doesn't work. So I see what they have to do, and because sometimes a movement that you have to go across the stage, go another side and singing, that's meant that you cannot do it. Maybe as you want to do it, but you have to wait for the singer to move. So I do music rehearsal before the orchestra, when they already did the staging, and not be always on the staging, because they do the correction during the staging, because they have to remember the notes when they do the movement. It's easy for the singer to remember. I'll do some phrases, some passages when they are doing with the movement, because the movement is remembering you both how to sing, how to move. You do at the at the music rehearsal on the chair. They write on the book, but when you go to stage, they are thinking to move, not to sing. So it has to be done together.
Right, and nowadays when the stagings very often are extremely complicated,
Yeah, of course.
that's particularly important. And sometimes the conductor has to say to the stage director, if you put the singer in that position, nobody's going to hear him or her, So it has to be coordinated somehow. How about the difference between conducting opera and conducting concerts? Do you have preference, or I know that to conduct a concert, the orchestra is there, you rehearse, and you do it. But Opera is much more complicated.
Opera is the biggest compromise in music because you have an idea, but it's not by you that is that idea, but by the singers. So it's a reflected ideas, and of course, even if they want to please you and do whatever you want, but it's always coming from their brain. So it's always a filter. It's never I got something that really I think or I thought, but always been mixed by the two ideas. This is the compromise. When you do the concert, it's you the orchestra. If you're not able to get them what you want, it's your mistake. When you have the greatest orchestra, but usually it's easy, you and them. I do prefer the opera because I love theater. I love tell a story. It's more challenging, even technically. So I do prefer opera, of course. But sometimes you need to do concert because stay a little bit apart from singers is good. Just cleaning your mind.
Aren't you married to one?
Yeah, I'm married with a singer.
So I rest
sometimes
I rest my case.
exactly.
Yeah, and you actually did say that singers have brains, so this is something that not all conductors admit.
I can tell you, living with the singers in their house, I can tell you the singing is the most difficult job to do.
It is.
No way. It's a real challenge singing because you don't know how you wake up in the morning, so you don't know how it's going to be the night. You have to sing.
Yeah.
So
the instrument is in your body.
Exactly. If you don't sleep, you know. So many variabilities.
Only dancing perhaps is worse than
Yes.
more difficult than being a singer. So I would like to show now, since we're talking about opera specifically, we have a clip of Rossini's L'Italiani in Algeri from the Aix-en-Provence Festival in 2006. And this relates really directly to what we were just talking about, because here you have, excuse me, this is the finale of the first act. In Rossini opera generally, in the comic operas, you reach a maximum of confusion halfway through, which is the end of the first act. And then gradually in the second act, things resolve. So here, you begin with a relatively small ensemble singing, fairly slowly, and the tension and the comic situation builds and builds and builds until you have this total confusion. And in this scene in particular, Rossini wrote this opera when he was an old man of 21. You have this that's based very closely on the old Neapolitan comic opera, where you have people who are in such a state of confusion that they just make sounds, ding, 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 and cra, 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 and boom, 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 and this sort of thing, just to illustrate that nobody knows anymore what's going on. So this builds and builds and builds. And the way it's controlled by Maestro Frizza in this performance is really remarkable. The tempo that he achieves in I don't know if it was on purpose or by accident, the ending is the fastest I've ever heard this performed.
This was a challenge we did. So the orchestra and the piece is a multi-chamber orchestra. So they're all young, they're real good shape technically, so they're great. And the undershrubber chorus on top and the young singer on stage. And every night it was a challenge between me and the orchestra to do it faster as possible. Unfortunately, when they did the recording, I thought it was the last performance, and really that night we tried to push as fast as we could.
Okay.
And I have to tell that today I should never do again. But at that time was really so energetic, so excited for everybody today. We didn't do that for the audience. We did for us because it was for us a challenge, and try to test our abilities. I should never do anymore. But it was fun, you know.
Yeah, it worked. Great.
You know, where, yeah, this, you need the singer that they're able to do that. Because this soprano, it is, and the baritone, do it crack, 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 crack. It's trying to do crack, 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 this tempo. Cioè, you have really talent to do that. They were spectacular. They were spectacular.
It's amazing.
It's I remember that during the rehearsal, we started, you know, and there, with no problem. And when you are there, you know, the directions by Tony Servillo, that was last, the last show he did with opera, because he was working in the text. You see the eyes, it was so very detailed that the critic didn't recognize the job. They said it was a bad show, you know, not. But he did so great job with the as an actor to explain them how to move, how to put their hands. It was spectacular. So he said, I don't want to do any more opera because critics in the opera doesn't understand about staging. So he decided to do actors. I agree with him because I remember that we spent 1 month working on the little details that afterwards nobody understood. So, but at least in television, you have the first, you know, you can say it, but some, open air was difficult to understand.
Also, you see, especially in a piece like this ensemble scene where you need absolutely precise coordination. Everybody's looking at the conductor there. They're all looking straight ahead. You know, sometimes in a slower piece, you can look away, the conductor follows you. You know, there's give and take. In a piece like that, where you need total coordination, everybody has to focus on the conductor, otherwise it's
Yes, also, there's also this very mechanical piece. For example, even from them, not just follow me, but follow, there's a keys in the system. For example, sometimes you have to listen to boom, 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 boom. So, because they can hear the octave, dig, 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 dig. When you sing, you don't really recognize where you are, but there are some keys, for example, or crack, 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 or boom, boom, boom. Depends on the situation. So, I get them coached about it. So now in this moment you have to listen to the bass. Now you have to listen to soprano. So they really be aware about, and it was really good for that. That was a great job. We did a great job on that.
In the old days, when audiences were more violent, the conductor would sometimes tell the singers and the orchestra, no matter what happens, watch me. Because, you know, if the audience starts to shout, you won't be able to hear what you're doing. You won't be able to hear yourselves, and you won't be able to hear what the orchestra is doing.
Yeah, this is
so
another.
Just watch me.
Yeah, you're right. And there's another, for example, for us, there's another moment that's complicated when, for example, in Maestro on this kind of opera with a close number, that between scenes you would like to continue in the same scene, and the audience start clapping, but you don't really give an upbeat, so you cannot stop it anymore. So they start clapping, you're running the music, so the audience feel bad because they say, okay, I'm wrong, I have to applaud. So they don't applaud anymore. But it's difficult because if you wait, it seems that you want to wait for the applause. If you start, it seems that you want to cut them. Sometimes it's really, I remember I got a bad critic about that. Someone said, Riccardo Frizza doesn't know how to manage with the audience with the clapping. But the problem that in that moment, I knew I'll move the show, so I know that if they're kissing, I have to interrupt the kiss, so I have to start with the music the moment so I try to go and, you know, I try to tell a story.
Yeah, this is always a difficulty, and now with some of the stagings that have become so complicated, it's even more difficult because the coordination with the lights and you know, if you miss a light cue or something like that, it can all go a little bit crazy. What about that? What about, for instance, updated stagings, contemporary stagings of classic works?
I have to tell, I have been really very lucky in my career because I never got up real strange directions. Maybe interesting, modern but interesting with a sense that for me is fine. But there's a sense that's not true. The music for me is fine. I did an Attila in Vienna, it was a new production with Peter Konvichny, this German director that everybody said that he's crazy, but for me he's a genius. He's not crazy, and was so badly received by the audience. So by the night he was killed by the audience. But I found that okay, Attila, 3 acts opera. Of course, he's telling the story of Attila and how bad he is, how bad is doing war everywhere. And he decided to put the first act, the characters in the during the childless, or they were babies, in playing, doing war, but like a play, like a joke, between them. So with non so quei mestoli delle pendole, doing war.
Pots and pans and
exactly.
spoons and what.
Second act, middle age, businessmen that doing war between, more in the business. And the third act in the retirement house, they were old on their wheelchairs but still fighting. The idea was, for me, was a very interesting idea, because at the end, the human being, when I want to do a war, because it's like a piece, but also the war is part of the human being. So they grew up, but they never changed their mind. These people. This was the message. But the people was seeing that the costume wasn't good, the set was too modern, but sometimes they don't go to see the real message that is in the show. Sometimes it's not clear, and they are right. I mean, they're right to say that they don't understand. But really, this was the only production was not well received that I did.
Again, this is so much easier for the conductor when you're just doing a concert, because you don't have to worry about the stage and whether it will be received well or not received well. The music is there, and you do it well or you don't do it well, but you do your best.
Overall, in the Italian repertoire, where the early 19th century opera, the librettos are really sometimes really unbelievable. Story like I remember what they did, Oberto con del Salvarifacio, or Verdi to say going to Donizetti. Sometimes it's better to do this opera on stage, without staging, just in concert, because you can really appreciate the music. Because not so much to do on stage. What did the libretto have to do with these operas? There is no libretto, there is no story. It's always this, it's a model that today doesn't work anymore. For example, I remember we did La Scala Alberto, and Mario Martone decided to transpose the opera in Napoli in our days with the Camorra. It was working very well because the delitto d'onore, I mean, maybe at the very time was something that already existed, maybe was interesting to discuss about it, but today nobody cares about the delitto d'onore anymore. So there's no any reason to put on stage this opera if you don't find something new to say. So I do agree that sometimes we have to transpose some operas. Okay, you do have not to transpose Tosca, you have not to transpose this kind of two historical operas where you have Santa Alla, you have the Castel Gandolfo, so that's make any sense to do something different. But Roberto con il San Bonifacio, where they have to fight with the sword, I mean today it doesn't make any sense to do it anymore. So or you do it in concert that you can enjoy the music, or do something interesting.
Yeah, that's by the way Verdi's first opera, Roberto, that was written 2 operas before Nabucco, his first really great success. Yeah, and you think of a confused plot like even Trovatore.
Yes.
I know there was a maestro sostituto, an assistant conductor at La Scala, who said to me once, "Before I die, I would like to know, is Azucena good or bad?"
Yeah, exactly. But I remember Also, for example, the show they have at the Metropolitan Opera, this Trovatore is not bad at all. I like a lot. I think it's the best Trovatore I saw around. It's difficult to put a stage Trovatore because the story is really is so absurd sometimes that you really what you have to do. So in the previous one was well received here in New York, what they did in 2001, I think, 2002. Yeah, and then after they changed the production. But it's not easy to put on stage Trovatore. The music is fantastic, you want to hear the music, but the story is it's ridiculous.
Now I'd like to know, anybody in the audience would like to ask something? Meister Frizza?
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
You say that you didn't study conducting in the conservatory. You studied conducting with private teachers?
No, I didn't. I was studying privately conducting in the beginning. At the same time, I was studying composing in the Conservatory of Milan. Well, I studied 2 years in Nakajima and in Pescara with my first conducting teacher, Gilberto Sarembe, for 2 years. And afterwards, I went to the military service. And after I said I don't want to study anymore because also in my life there were moments where I decided to quit. Or I decided to I continue, I quit, I continue. It wasn't clear, you know. So I stopped studying conducting I started studying that in 1989, 1991, 3 years. And afterwards I stopped until I went to Milan doing a master class because a friend of mine asked me, why you don't come with us, you do a master class with Maestro Gelmetti in Milan. I said, okay, let's go. But was not really interesting for me because I said I don't want to be a musician anymore. But going there, I found again the motivation to because it was also my first time with a confrontation with other students. So there you can see if you are talented or not because you see other people's your age. So I discovered I said, I'm not bad, I can do it. So it was a good motivation to start to study again. So afterward, I started to follow Gelmetti for 3 years in Siena, and I've been his assistant for some production in Pesaro, actually, in 1999, when he did Tancredi. And I liked a lot the atmosphere of the Rossini Opera Festival in Pesaro, because of summers, many musicians, many singers, many conductors. So I said, I want to come here next year to be an assistant conductor to another conductor because I think I learn more to be here than going to Siena. So I quit Siena. I even finished my course in Siena. And I went to Pesaro in 2000. In 2001 I did my debut in Pesaro. So it was my story as a student wasn't really a good story because I was quitting.
Anyway, I mean, the whole idea of studying conducting is a modern concept.
Exactly.
Because until it's only with really early 20th century music, Stravinsky, The Rite of Spring, and so on, that the rhythmic complexities become such that somebody had the idea, Pierre Monteux, for instance, of teaching conducting, teaching the technical aspect. But as I think I said the last time we had one of these sessions, the basic technique of conducting is very simple. It's not like learning to play an instrument. What's difficult about conducting is working with the other musicians, not beating 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3. It's the flexibility and so on.
I remember, I don't know who asked to Leonard Bernstein in front of the Lincoln Center, Philharmonic after years, maestro, please teach me how to conduct. This is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4. Why? Because I think everybody, I always say that everybody could understand and learn how to conduct, but you're born conductor. Every kids go to play soccer or football as you want, but very few come Messi, Kleiber, or very few. And you have this skill, this talent. It's a matter of communication. It's not a matter of doing 1, 2, 3, 4. The orchestra does not need that. If you start beating 1, 2, 3, 4 after 4 bars, they do this because they don't need it, so they don't look at you anymore. So conducting is a philosophy, is psychology, is talent, for me is something you have to say. If you have something to say, this is conducting.
Yeah, the same, what I mentioned before in this interview I saw with Bruno Walter, it also shows him rehearsing an orchestra in the first movement of Brahms' Second Symphony. You know, he did not have, a lot of people mentioned, he did not have a very advanced, let's say, conducting technique. There's a lot of this, just like this, but it's so clear from his way of being and the kind of movement he makes, what he wants. It's all here, and it is communicated directly to the orchestra. There's something. It is psychology, and it is, of course, knowing what you want. The conductor has to know what he wants and know how to get it. There are those two components.
Yeah, but even if you know how to get it, sometimes you don't have the talent to tell. You know, but you. Well, this is something difficult to explain, but you need to have this
chemistry.
Yeah, chemistry or the natural talent that give you the possibility to communicate with people. Like when it's interesting when you see now for the presidential, American presidential debate in TV. Yeah, there's so many people talking, but the ability to speak to the people. This is something that's not common. I mean, there is people that's more, there's people they have less, but they have something behind to say. But how to say is a talent. The way even they can teach you to do it. But if it's not natural, you are boring. It's nobody listen. So this is almost the same. It's like a good trainer in a team, a football team, a soccer team, a culture. You can have the best player. Look at Real Madrid. They have a best player, but they just changed the trainer because the trainer was not communicating so, or has not the charisma that Zidane has, for example. You know, it's like that. It's not possible to explain.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it your experience that musicians in American and U.S. orchestras are more accepting and more respectful of what you want than in Europe? For instance, I know that here the musicians adore, having Riccardo Muti, and in Milan they don't like him. I mean, the orchestra doesn't care for him at all. And do you have such experiences here, where the musicians are much more accepting of what you want?
I think it's the same matter of communication. I give an example. If you are a musician that plays the Met Orchestra, that every night is go to the pit to play an opera. Every night they do almost the same pieces during the week. So in 2-3 weeks they play over the same pieces, 5 titles. So you what expect to not be a routine. You expect that someone is on the podium is giving some new ideas every night. So I think if you have ideas to give them, to put them the same page in another color, at least it's another color, it's not the same page, And this ability is what make a difference. I think that after 20 years, Muti, not because they don't respect Muti and La Scala, because they respect a lot as a musician, but maybe after 20 more years, they want something new. They're expecting something new. I'm sure that when Muti is one of the greatest conductors today, go to the podium, La Scala, and start a Verdi opera, they're already expecting which kind of attitude, the musical attitude, which kind of musical orchestra is going to do it. So it's not interesting anymore. I think this isn't the natural of the people.
Yeah, there are very few examples of conductors who stay for such a long period with the same ensemble, because the relationship sometimes becomes stale, more than anything else. I mean, Levine here with the Met is a real exception.
Yes,
It's a real exception. There are very, very few examples of such a long period of one music director. And of course, that's partly because out of a season of 26 or 28 operas, at most he would have conducted 6 or 7, even, you know, when he was in top form. So, you know, it's a constant shift. Whereas in a season that doesn't have as many operas being performed, which is the case even at La Scala, let alone at some of the smaller theaters, you have the music director who is there most of the time, and so the relationship can become strained.
I think it's more American in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you say Michael Dixon Thomas and San Francisco Symphony, James Levine and the Man, we have long relations, but in Europe it's not like that. I mean, there is some exception, Karajan, the Berliner Philharmonic, Abbado, but it was not so long, and Muti, but usually it's 4 or 5 years. And I think that in 4 or 5 years, maximum 6 years, you can tell everything you need to tell to an orchestra, and after you need also as a conductor a new experience. Because if you go in the mid-range orchestra, your mission is to grow up the orchestra, the level of the orchestra, so you need time, but after when you reach the level, I think you need another motivation. So 4 or 5 years for me is the perfect time to have a relation with the orchestra.
Any other questions?
I don't know.
Yes? Go
Just
ahead.
a comment.
Yeah.
I was at the season premiere of Maria Stuarda, you know, last week, 2 weeks ago, and for me it was great. It was absolutely beautiful. I mean, you conducted, you know, performance. But you mentioned that the second performance was better than the first one.
No, I say that there are 7 performances, and next Saturday will be the last one. So
Yeah.
this number 6 that we did last Tuesday,
Okay.
2 days ago, for me was the best of the run so far. I hope that Saturday will be the best, but because they got 4 days off, more or less people, you know, we were suffering everybody from a stomach virus. Is going to the Met. Not just me, but me, and after my wife and my daughter, and the singers of other productions. Was really a virus going all over the theater. It was really not nice, you know. But you have to go to sing in any case, and even maybe if you stay in the toilet all day, and that's not good, you know. Yeah. It's your job.
Mother Nature is Mother Nature.
Exactly.
Okay, I think, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mike.
Thank you.
March 2nd, Fabio Luisi is my next victim. So we'll hope to see you and many more.